Hello, I want to go over now the next steps into finishing off this Analytics Engineering DBT 0 through 200 onboarding tutorial. And the next step that we're going through after creating our data models is looking at a couple of DBT features as well. And here we're going to go into looking at documentation and how to create documentation, particularly a website to visualize our documentation, respectively, of our data mart that we've stood up. So let's check that out. So here in the documentation, it's great. It helps you, your team, business individuals to understand your reporting data sets, respectively with the data models that you created. Here's like an example of what that will look like, and also an actual example of this implementation as well. But just going to a quick overview, as a summarization, documentation is a love letter to your future self. And just having this in mind would enable, again, you, your team, and other business users to really understand what's being created in your data mart, to get a little bit more insight as an overview, and hopefully making data sets in your data mart a lot more usable to be adopted. And so how do we create this website, or particularly, how do we create this website? Into everything that we've created in our data model, our marks in particular for our factor and dimension tables, to get into the base layer and the staging layer. And how do we get this like documentation all together as seen right here? Well, I'll show you. So what's great is that we can add multiple YAML files respectively with our subfolders of our queries in our table creation or view creation. And then we can create these like YAML files with our specification of the naming convention. There's no proper naming convention needed to store the particular metadata for documentation in DBT docs. And here's a snippet of what's utilized for the dimension folder. So here in our YAML file, we did like an indent of the name of a particular dimensional table, and then we'll list out the columns and with the descriptions as well. And the descriptions can be whatever. And then some other particular metadata attribute information can be added as well, respectively of the columns or the tables themselves. You can definitely find out more about that in getdbtdocs.com, which is a wonderful website for great extensive documentation if you want to check that out a little bit more in detail. And so adding the information, overview information as well, can give us a quick overview of what our documentation hub will be. So right now what I'm doing is backtracking and going into the overview section, having a customized overview for our DBT documentation. And the way we go about adding this overview before jumping into particular tables is this little snippet of code right here, or code, snippet of text. We won't quite call it code, but text right here. And it's mapped in these statements right here. So we have docs as the particular metadata information, and then a particular table name, or the table name, and then we add some like related information and Markdown readability. If you want to learn about Markdown as well, I can reference that as well, an additional resource of how to get started with Markdown. And here's an example of creating that particular like YAML file and Markdown file respectively in the folder to create the documentation as well. And before going into generating and presenting our website, let's just go into our repository real quick to get like an understanding of what I just said. Or something a little bit more in practice of to everything I mentioned in creating our documentation for our data mart, or even other layers as well, like the base or staging layer. But we're going to focus here on the mart layer. So here we have our queries to materialize our tables. I'm going here into the YAML file. We have the particular tables right here mentioned in as names and these particular indentations and the descriptions of these tables as well, wrapped around in a particular name under doc statement. And this reference comes from the respective markdown file that's in this directory of the YAML file. See right here, we have the docs tag in reference to the statement right here, and a particular table name, and some associated information as well in markdown format in the docs as well, and then continue on with the documentation for the particular tables that we have. This way you're adding that information, and then for the particular column descriptions, metadata, etc. like that, we go into different indentations to add that particular metadata as well. So that's pretty much it into curating a particular documentation for our tables, about how we go about inserting that up as a website or an HTML document, particularly for a little bit more technical. So here we use the commands dbtdocs_generate to materialize the particular files we need to present our documentation, and locally in your machine you can hit like dbtdocs_serve, no reference to your local home directory within your machine, and then you can visualize that yourself, or you can host it on a particular website hosting service like S3, Netlify, GitHub Pages, etc. To go about that as well. And let's go to that website that I just showed just a little bit before. So this is hosted on GitHub Pages. And just keep in mind that if it's a public page, anyone can view this particular website. So I just want to keep in mind, say if you have some important business information, you want to keep that private, just making sure you have the right security permissions enabled for yourself with the respective way of how you want to generate your HTML documentation, or excuse me, DBT docs. And there's like 5 files you need for this, and I'll show that very briefly. This is me just interacting with the data warehouse, excuse me, the data model documentation. You can see here for each one, I have these overview descriptions that were part of the markdown file. Check them out, etc. Okay, now let's actually see the particular files we need to generate this file, host it in a particular service. So we go into, yes, right here. We grab these files, the manifest.json, the runresults.json file, and there was like one more, might be the JPickle one, but you just want to play around and test out and see where you want to get these files at. I'm pretty sure there's an index.html file here, but it's not there, but it should be there. Those are particular files that you want to get to then generate your DBT Docs website, particularly on GitHub Pages, which is displayed right here. Going back into our documentation, there's a lot more things you can do with DBT Docs, but I'll leave it up to you just to check out the documentation on DBT or getdbt.com to get started with that. And there you have quite extensive amount of documentation needed to help you in your journey to onboarding DBT. And again, documentation is a love letter to your future self and also to your future colleagues as well. That's pretty much it. And then next step, we're going to go into the final items, which is testing, and then template and macros as well. So stay tuned for that.